Welcome to Post in Black. My name is David Hunter Jr. and thank you guys for tuning in again. Today we have the wonderful, lovely Lorraine. How are you doing, Miss Lady?
I'm doing good.
Doing great, doing great.
Yes.
Now, before we start off all of our episodes, we always like to start with an icebreaker. So, you seem quite fashionable. Online shopping or in-store shopping?
Oh, in-store.
In-store?
Yes.
Okay, you said that like there's no doubt at all.
There is no doubt.
What is that for you? It's just better being there, seeing everything, trying on?
Okay, well, one thing is I'm short and I have wide hips. It definitely in-store because if I get the correct size jeans, they're always laid down here.
They're tying up your ankles, I see.
Yes.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
Yeah.
You need to make sure.
I need to make sure.
I'm with you. I like in-store stuff too, but a lot of times in this day and age, people are like, oh, I never go to the store. And I'm like, how do you buy anything? You just hope that it fits, hope that it works. Maybe shoes.
I know.
Other than that.
Tailor it.
Tailor it? Okay. So the in-store, I like that. So we're already off on the same page here. So here at Post in Black, we're trying to find out a little bit about our people who are working behind the scenes in post-production, editing, directing, cinematography. So tell the people a little bit about yourself. Who are you?
Well, I am a current graduate student at USC, the University of Southern California. I'm studying film and television production.
All right.
With a focus in editing and writing.
Okay, fighting on out here.
Fighting on.
Look at you. All right. Now, you mentioned a few things there with editing and film production. So what exactly are you actually working on all the way? What do you want to do for your career? Because you seem like you have a lot on your plate.
I do. I do. This industry is all about just getting your hands dirty. And being at graduate school, I'm a very open-minded person, so I didn't close myself off to opportunities and ways to learn about this industry. So right now, I'm interning at Variety, and I interned at The Hollywood Reporter to sharpen my ability to craft a story, which helps me with screenwriting. And screenwriting and editing is very similar. Editing is just writing through visuals.
Yeah.
And so it's crafting that story that way. So that ability to use journalism to craft a story lends itself to editing, crafting a story.
Yeah.
And yeah, USC is it has 6 departments. It focuses on all aspects of production. And so I've been I take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, I like the way you put it, you take advantage of it. But, before we touch on that, I'm not going to let you gloss over interning at Variety and Hollywood Reporter. Those are not just things that you can just come upon. So how did you even get into that, and how has it been like working at these places? Because these are some pretty heavy hitters in the industry.
They are definitely. So one of the things that I did was, even though I decided to pursue my graduate degree after pursuing a career, and I did journalism.
Wow.
And that was one of the things that I loved. So when I got into grad school, even though I was studying film, I still went and wrote for my university's newspaper.
Wow. Okay.
I got published. I was also able to tell stories about other filmmakers at my university in my classes and above me, and then use those to get me in the door at the Hollywood Reporter.
Oh, awesome.
And then, of course, I'm there. I'll get into Variety.
Yeah. And it seems like it's a plethora of relationships that you've kind of cultivated just by being in position. Because you're like providing a service, so you've gained a lot of resources, would you say?
Yeah, I remember one of our first conversations. Remember the taco restaurant, right?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Out Glendale, yeah.
And you told me your story, and you said you show up to the event, and you speak to the people, and sometimes you just show up to learn and see. And that with Variety, it gets me in the door to be around these people. I learn about the business of the industry and who is on what and how these relationships form and never end.
Right.
Like the same people who are now at Apple were previously at Sony, and they still talk.
Yeah.
And that's how they came up with First Man. I believe that's what it's called. For All Mankind.
We will have it edited in post underneath there if it's not.
Yes. So I believe it is For All Mankind. Those executives' friendship never ended, even though some went on to Apple, some stayed at Sony.
Right. No, for us, I think one thing that I learned very, very early on, you know, a lot of times, especially we're talking post and black, so we highlight African Americans in the community. Black people, not coloring us all the same, but sometimes there's a mindset of a limit. And we say we can't do this, or I don't have the resource to get in. Like, I remember going to a restaurant, I'm like, well, I don't have the money for what they serve. And one of my boys who's very high up, he said, we don't got to order that. We can go in and order a drink.
It's true.
And the mindset. And I was like, oh, he said, we're limiting ourselves to say we can't even go in there. You can go in and order an appetizer for $10. You don't got to order the $100 steak. But we're looking at the most expensive thing saying, well, I can't get that. But what can you get? If you can just get in the room, you can see what's on the menu.
That's
and
true.
if you're not in the room seeing what's on the menu, it might be you, you know?
It's so true.
He's like, you got to figure out what's being talked about. So just being in the room sometimes helps you to know what's going on. And then you can learn for the next time what to say and how to navigate. So that was my early on, schooling and my train of thought, because I had a very limited. I was like, oh man, I was thinking a certain way. So that's glad you're there. You're learning. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you being at SC, you're in grad school. Did you go to undergrad there, or how did you get into this field? Was that always a dream, or it just came about after the fact?
I did go to University of Florida.
Okay.
And my mother had a goal that I would be an artist.
Oh wow.
And so from a very young age, I was studying the craft of storytelling through acting, and she also made sure that I had access to a computer throughout my years and access to a library. So I was always writing or acting.
Okay.
And
it kind of steered you. So you said writing and acting, and now you're doing mostly writing. So you kind of fell more in love with that, would you say?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did fall more in love with the writing side and having more control of my stories through writing and crafting the film. And
I think that's really powerful when we're touching on Post and Black, because you said crafting your story. And I see a lot of times you may have a movie that has, a black cast, maybe a black director. If the editor sometimes may not be a black, or if the writer, how are they going to shift the story in a way that may not connect or may not be as truthful? Is that something that you think is powerful, or would you say is true to that statement?
I can agree to that. I mean, we can only tell stories from what we know. Mm-hmm. And sometimes our experiences color what we shape out on the screen. And though I say other races can tell beautiful stories about other people, we also carry our own biases. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, we're seeing an industry that is recognizing that there are diverse people in the world who want to see diverse stories told, and we're seeing very progressive filmmakers who want to tell truthful stories about all types of people. One of my favorite movies that came out this year was The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Okay. Yes.
With a white director. I didn't look up and see
until after you're like, wait, what?
Yeah, I was blown away. I wonder what that film would have looked like with a black filmmaker, but I think he did that story justice. Okay. But even then, he carries his own biases.
Right. There's still so many things. There's a movie that I saw not this year, but a couple of years ago called Detroit. And it was very kind of controversial because Kathryn Bigelow, Oscar award-winning director, she told a story, and it was deemed as very kind of graphic in the violence against the young black man in the movie. And from a white perspective, that may just seem like, oh, I didn't do anything, I was telling the story. But from a black perspective, when you see that, if it's us telling the story, then you're like, okay, yeah, that's how they be doing us. But if it's somebody else showing things that are happening and just seem like torture, you're like, why am I watching this? Why do you get off seeing us being tortured like this? This perspective, why did you focus on this part of the story instead of something else? And we're left to question versus agreeing with our own brother, saying, I don't know if I like that. Now we have to put everything in question. It's kind of like with race. If a white person doesn't speak to you, is it because they didn't hear you? Or is it because you're black? Yeah. And we're left to decide. And it's weird.
And it can come from the history that we have. Catherine Bigelow probably made, and she's one of our first female Oscar-winning directors.
Yeah.
She made that film with the best intentions of her heart, but she couldn't come only from her experience. That's why it's our challenge to us to get out here and tell these stories and not be afraid to tell stories, not just about us, but about other races, because that's going to get us in the door.
That's going to get us even more, not just telling. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, why aren't we out directing a Little Women or Pride and Prejudice?
Yeah.
Or
we always got to do the Selmas and, you know what I mean, and the Harriets and all these other things, but we can do more than that.
And they're quick to tell those stories about us.
Real talk. Yeah. That's another story. So we're talking about you and your career. So you're at SSEE, grad school. How is that going? Have you had any mentors and learning? What has been the most exciting part of working in the industry? You know, you're writing, but then you're working as an editor. You've directed some. You're doing a lot in post, and you said you're crafting the narrative as an editor, as a writer. What has been the most exciting part of that? And then the most challenging part, would you say?
The most exciting part about being at SSEE is the people there.
Okay.
They're brilliant, and there's just a huge history and access that you have at that university. Leander Sales, it took me on as his student assistant, and he mentored and coached me and gave me my first job. And while I was on that job, he would edit the film, he would pause the film, he would turn and look at me and say, "What's wrong with that?"
Yeah.
And I would look at the screen and be like, "I don't know." He said, "Look really closely." "I don't know." They moved the light. He would rewind to the previous clip and see and point out that the scene is lit differently. And then he would say, "Lorraine, don't you do that as a director." He started out with Spike Lee. And so he's able to look at a shot that he's working on and speak to it and comment on as if he's a director, and then turn to me and coach me about that. I was in an assistant position, and I know assistant positions can be looked down upon, but they're great experiences because you get to work under somebody who's brilliant, who has gone through and paid his dues in this industry. And so Leander Sales was able to make me a better director by coaching me just through the editing. And then he's a testament that editors make great directors because they understand why a shot is good. They understand how it can be consistent.
Okay.
They also understand the types of coverage that you need to tell the story. And they're writing visually. They're
writing visually, I like that. One of the things that Leander mentioned, he said one of his most favorite jobs was being a security guard, and he watched people. And I thought that was amazing. He said, yeah, security guard is a perfect editor. He said, you're literally supposed to watch people all day. And I was like, now that's funny. How that guy go in there, he was this big, now he's this big. He said, or he watched the facial expressions of people's mannerisms, how they felt. And I thought that was just crazy how he felt that was the job that made him an editor. So some people would despise something that they're doing in the moment, and you never know. It could set you up for success down the road along with what you're going towards.
It's true. Nothing is to be taken for granted.
Yeah. So now you're at SSEE, you had a great mentor. Now I'm sure you're ready to jump into the field. So how do you transition now into your own work? Because you're working at SSEE. Have there been a project that you've worked on or you're trying to work on where you're like, oh, I'm going to be able to use my skill set here? What is the next step? What are you doing right now?
Currently, I'm working on a short film that I want to take to festival. And so I am crafting a story about a young man who is struggling in a toxic relationship while in school. And once I finish with that story, I'm going to send it to festival because agents go to festival to watch. And also that can be a visual resume for you when you go knocking on on doors for jobs.
Right. And in your situation, being a student and then obviously having a mentor, working in the industry is a little bit different right now because you're still able to sit back and kind of observe. So what are some trends that you're observing in the industry for work that you like, that you say, oh, I want to kind of get into this, or I see how this can help me there? And what are some things, you already mentioned the festival route with the agents, but what are some things that you're noticing, in terms, and then also being a young woman, person of color.
Well, I work at Variety, right?
Yeah, I know. Let your boy know. Let the people know. Let them know. So what's going on?
I am going to tell you.
Yeah.
Streaming is where it's at.
Yeah,
and guess who has money? Apple, Amazon.
Hey now.
Guess what? They don't rely on the entertainment industry to make money.
That's true.
It's a side thing for them. I still think, Disney owns a huge portion of the market. Yeah. And so they're just great places where I'm going to be watching to see what is happening, where is a need. If Apple releases shows with majority white people and all white writers' room, guess what? They're going to eventually need.
They're going to eventually need. Yeah.
They're going to eventually start looking for the next Black or person of color to write a story.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be knocking.
You're going to be there. You're going to be there.
Yeah.
Has there been anything like you notice? Obviously, getting into industry, you hear people say it's so hard. Has there been any kind of you've had great opportunities? The Mentor with Leander, Variety, Hollywood Reporter. But has there ever been any fear? Not fear, but maybe something where you're like, man, I don't know, because the percentages say this about people trying to get into this. Or even for a woman, do you feel like there's certain conversations that you don't get to have, or opinions that you don't get to express as much in terms of trying to break in and show your skill set? Or they want to push you in one way? Do you feel like you still have a voice that you're able to use getting further along in your career?
This industry is very cruel. I know that Variety just released an article that the percentage for improvement for women directors has increased over a decade for the first time.
Wow.
I'm not quoting it correctly, but it's around that. And to know that this is our generation, that we're seeing the change. How long has the film industry been around? I went to the Women's Image Awards.
Okay, yeah.
And a very powerful executive, she had 2 shows on the air. They got canceled. They were award-winning shows. It took her 10 years to get another showrunner or executive leadership role in the industry. It can be hard being a woman or a person of color in this industry. However, I'm not afraid that the opportunity is there because you have to learn how to speak up for yourself and be a friend to people in this industry.
Well, I was gonna say, what does that mean when you say speak up and be speak up? We know that, but be a friend. What does that mean? Because does it mean like a lot of people we hear that word and some people hate it, some people live by networking. So when you say be a friend, what do you mean per se?
So take that networking one step further to being of service.
There it is.
You follow up with a call. You meet the person for coffee. You find a need, and then you meet them for another coffee. You attend an event. You recognize them when they have something. If they need help, you go help them. And then you also ask for help. So that's one of the things that I can be bad about. Because Variety has given me access to very powerful people. I have formed friendships with them. I have to see them as my peers. And sometimes I think in my head, oh, I don't want to call that person. He doesn't want to be bothered with me. He expects me to call him. Especially if he told me to call him. Okay. And so I have to utilize that relationship.
Right.
also knowing that I only have so much time, so I cannot be friends with 100 people unless I have the ability to hire an assistant. There's a good book that said, never eat alone.
Yeah.
He's a master networker.
It's amazing.
He hired someone to keep up his relationship. I'm not hiring anyone.
No, we don't need to right now. You know what I mean? And not at that point.
Yeah.
But it's just, I think that's good advice. You know, I actually literally wrote in my journal recently, do not feel the need or the pressure to fill the empty space in your calendar unnecessarily. And I've been guilty of that. And sometimes we have to acknowledge the weaknesses. And I've been guilty of being tired and worn out and then saying, why am I so tired? And I don't know who prays or who does that. But a guy was talking to me. He was like, my guy, you are the one that filled your calendar. You the one like, I can do it. And literally just giving your time away. And sometimes that time is needed for your mind to relax, your time to, you know, think, be creative and be fresh with making correct decisions. Because if you're not fresh, you'll make tired decisions, lazy decisions, incorrect decisions. Your judgment will be off about who you should connect to. Maybe you connect to somebody, but maybe you don't need to talk to them about everything. Maybe it needs to be a quick and go. So those are, when you said that, I think there's some truth to that. All right. Now we're switching it up. We're switching it up a little bit. We're switching it up. Now you're working and you're doing writing, you're doing all this, but you've worked in post and you have something. Is there something that you see that intrigues you more about post-production? Because you mentioned how the writing and the editing connected. What stands out to you, having worked with Leander, being behind the scenes now? What stands out to you more? What do you feel like is going to help you more as a director moving forward for your projects that you've noticed behind the scenes?
Sound. Leander made sure. Made sure that I was very specific with my storytelling through sound.
The average person that's watching right now on Post in Black, they're saying, you know, I can hear them, they sound good, you know, but they don't know everything that goes into it. We've had a couple sound mixers on the episodes. We've had people that have literally, you know, talked about boom mics and all that. But when you talk about storytelling through sound, what do you really mean? If there's a movie that stands out to you where people can go watch, that's an example. Like, give us something.
Right now, because I loved the Handmaid's Tale, so I tried to like use that in the piece that Leander was working on and I was assisting, and he had me delete out all my like background and eerie sounds. Really? He was like, "This is not the Handmaid's Tale." I'm like,
he was speaking truth.
He was. So what? Really, movement. If the character moves on screen, what are we hearing? That is pivotal, and then atmosphere. Are there birds? I had a guy walking through a gas station. It was at night. In reality, you heard nothing. I added in sounds of bats because it's a horror. That adds some tension, it adds some fear. I also, if he was inside of a car. When he opened the dashboard and he closed it, I added in something that would emphasize him closing the dashboard. I like to use sound to hint at what's coming. That can be like a clue into your next scene. Also, sound can be used to create smoother transitions.
Yeah.
And so I like to do that. And good sound design can save badly recorded dialogue. My second directing piece that I did for class, I recorded it during a USC football game. And I had to have it on the balcony because the shots were good. So, and we didn't have the right XLR cord, so he was having to hold the boom a little bit closer. I had on a protective shield, but when I got my sound back, although my dialogue was there, it was two lawyers on a balcony on a university campus with a huge football game. The lawyers are supposed to be in New York. What I did, though, was I added in traffic.
Okay.
So I made it, okay, it could be a Macy's Day Parade.
Yeah, it could be something.
Yes, you hear a cop, you hear an airplane going. And so now my messy sound is justified. And I'm able to clean it up and tell a story through my sound, so you don't think there's two lawyers sitting on a university campus.
Yeah.
Instead, you think two lawyers in a busy city where a parade's just out in the distance.
Yeah, just trying to shape the story in a certain way and let the audience kind of decide what's going on there while they're, like, not being distracted. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Good way to put it. We can find Lorraine on social media, IG.
You can. My IG is Rain Wheaties.
Rain Weed. Yeah.
Rain with an E added on it, and Wheaties like the cereal because I'm a champion.
We keeping that in there too.
Okay, and then Twitter is Rain Wheat.
All right, Rain Wheat. Anything you're working on coming up? I know you have a ride. You're riding now, so you got a lot going on. But anything you're working on that we should be looking out for coming up?
Yes, I'm working on a short film. It's 10 minutes. It tells a story about a young man who is in school, who recently got out of jail and decided to go into community college and get his life on track. And so I hope to complete it and then send it to festival, and then I will still be in LA, hustling, living the dream, pursuing the dream. Yay.
We out here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Posting Black. We appreciate LTE Visions for hosting, Lorraine Weed for being a guest. And no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, remember that you are more than capable. I'm your host, David Hunter Jr. at David Hunter Jr. We'll see you next week.